Along the cold, gray shores of Delaware, where the tide rolls in heavy and the wind carries the scent of rust and deep water, stand warehouses that have watched centuries of ships come and go. Warehouses built from weathered wood, stone, and iron. Warehouses that once stored cargo stories and secrets that now seep into the salt-soaked air. During the day, these old harbor buildings look abandoned, quiet, almost forgotten. But when dusk falls and fog drifts low over the docks, they awaken. You can hear metal creaking against the current. Doors rattle though no wind blows. Shadows move inside the broken windows, tall and thin, drifting between stacks of old crates left behind by sailors who vanished long ago. Some say the warehouses breathe exhaling cold drafts that brush against your skin like fingers made of ice. Exhaling cold drafts that brush against your skin like fingers made of ice. Night workers hauling nets up from the water report lantern lights flickering behind closed warehouse doors. Dock patrols hear footsteps walking along the catwalks high above the ground, echoing slowly, methodically, as if someone is pacing back and forth even though every patrol insists the place is empty. Others have seen pale figures standing at the edge of the docks, dripping seawater, staring toward the warehouses as if waiting to be let inside. The tide rises, the fog thickens, and the old structures groan as though remembering something they wish to forget. Tonight, we will walk the harbor's edge together. We will step between the rusty beams and rotting planks. We will listen to the shifting water beneath our feet. And enter the most haunted harbor warehouses in all of Delaware. Places where spirits linger. Where the past refuses to leave. And where the ocean keeps its dead close. So let me ask you, my brave friend. If you were walking alone along a foggy dock at night, and you heard heavy footsteps echoing from inside a sealed warehouse, would you push the door open? Or would you turn away before something inside turned its attention toward you? Hello, my dear friend. I am so glad you are here with me tonight, safe and warm, because we are about to step into the coldest corners of Delaware's haunted harbors. These warehouses, once bustling with sailors, merchants, and dockworkers, now stand half-collapsed and quietly rotting beside the water. But their silence is deceiving. Inside their walls, time has frozen. And something else has filled the stillness. Sailors once whispered that spirits follow the tide. That ghosts cling to ships like barnacles. And that when men died at sea, sometimes they found their way back to the warehouses where their final cargo was meant to rest. Visitors who wander these docks today describe hearing chains dragging across wooden floors. They have seen wet footprints appearing on the ground in long trails. Even when no one is near. Some say they felt breathing against their necks. Cold, deliberate. Followed by the sound of something dropping into the water behind them. Others report hearing tapping on metal beams overhead. Slow. Steady. Like someone trapped inside is begging for help. There are stories of warehouse doors unlocking themselves. Stories of crates shaking violently, as though something inside is trying to claw its way out. Stories of faint singing from the rafters, voices distorted by salt and time. And many speak of a presence. A heavy, watchful presence. That follows them all the way back to shore. Before we enter these harbors together, I want to ask you something. And I hope you will answer in the comments. If you were exploring an abandoned warehouse at night, and you heard something drop into the water behind you. Something heavy. Something that sounded almost like a person. Would you turn around? Or would you run for the exit without looking back? Take a breath. Steady your heart. And let us walk into the haunted harbor warehouses of Delaware. Saltmarsh Dockhouse stands at the edge of a quiet estuary where the tide meets weathered wooden pilings. Its exterior is worn from years of salt-laden winds and relentless moisture. The paint peels in long, curling strips, and the timbers creak under the weight of countless storms. Approaching the building, visitors notice the lingering scent of brine, mingled with old wood and the faint tang of fish. The structure appears abandoned to the untrained eye, yet the dockhouse remains surprisingly intact, as if held together by the very salt and water it has weathered for decades. Inside, the walls bear the unmistakable marks of the marsh. Water stains climb unevenly, tracing irregular paths that reach upward like long, grasping fingers. The discoloration varies from pale gray to dark streaks that suggest persistent dampness. These stains tell the story of tides rising, storms surging, and years of neglect. They give the dockhouse an atmosphere that is both somber and alive, as though the walls themselves remember the passage of time and the movements of the water beyond. Even during dry months, the interior carries the chill of moisture. Floors creak underfoot, and old crates stacked against the walls groan as though shifting slightly with invisible weight. Shadows gather in corners, forming dark pockets that seem to deepen when viewed directly. Lanterns and flashlights illuminate only a small portion of the room, leaving much of the dockhouse swallowed in gloom. At night, workers and late visitors often hear the unmistakable sound of splashing water from inside. The noise rises in soft arcs and splashes that echo through the room, though the floor remains dry. The sound is uneven, unpredictable, and seems to come from multiple directions at once. Some report hearing footsteps in rhythm with the splashes, as if some ania or something is moving carefully along the floor. Others notice small droplets that appear on the crates, forming brief, glistening marks before vanishing without leaving a trace. The sound of splashing becomes more pronounced during high tide or storms, as if the dockhouse reacts to the water outside, drawing the motion inward. Travelers describe the sensation as eerie and unsettling, particularly when the wind howls through gaps in the walls and roof, mingling with the echoing splashes. The dockhouse feels as though it is alive, breathing in time with the estuary itself, responding to events outside in a rhythm that cannot be explained. Some claim to have seen a figure among the shadows. A pale man crawling across the crates, moving slowly and deliberately, searching for a way out. Witnesses describe him as unnaturally thin, almost translucent, with limbs that stretch and bend in subtle, unsettling ways. He does not speak or acknowledge anyone present. His movements are methodical, focused solely on navigating the stacks of crates as though guided by some unseen force. When confronted directly with light, he vanishes, leaving no footprints or signs that he was ever there. Only the faint sound of shifting crates or a distant splash remains to mark his presence. Stories passed down from old dockworkers suggest that the dockhouse was once used as storage for shipments traveling to and from the estuary. They speak of accidents and drownings, of laborers who disappeared under mysterious circumstances, of nights when strange figures were glimpsed among the cargo. Some claim that the pale man is one of those lost souls, trapped between the water and the dockhouse, unable to leave or find peace. Others suggest the figure may be tied to the building itself, a spirit formed from years of labor and the relentless presence of tides. Explorers who spend time in the dockhouse often describe moments when the environment feels charged. The air grows colder and thicker, dampness pressing against the skin. Explorers who spend time in the dockhouse often describe moments when the environment feels charged. Shadows appear to stretch and move independently of the light source. Small sounds, almost imperceptible, echo in succession of the creak of a floorboard, the tap of a crate lid, the faint trickle of water, and each contributes to the sense that the house itself is aware of their presence. Visitors feel watched, not with hostility, but with the persistent attention of something confined and focused. One traveler described standing near the crates when he heard splashes directly behind him. He spun quickly, shining his lantern across the room, and saw the pale figure crawling across the stacks. He froze, unable to look away as the figure moved with eerie deliberation. The next moment, the man vanished into the shadows, and the splashing ceased as suddenly as it had begun. The air felt heavier in the aftermath, as if the room itself had sighed. Another visitor recounted being awakened in a corner room at the far end of the dockhouse. The sound of splashing drew her toward the center of the space. She saw small droplets appearing in the air, suspended briefly before falling to the floor, yet she found no source. In the dim glow of her lantern, she glimpsed a pale shape moving low across the crates. Before it faded completely. She described the moment as both beautiful and terrifying. A presence connected to the rhythm of the water, rather than the solid world around it. Saltmarsh Dockhouse remains a destination for those drawn. Those drawn to the unknown, the curious, and the brave. It is a place where the tides leave their mark not only on wood and stone, but on the senses of those who enter. The tides leave their mark not only on wood and stone. The splashes, the pale figure, and the water-stained walls tell a story of loss, labor, and a lingering presence that refuses to vanish. Visitors leave with the memory of the dockhouse etched into their minds, the chill of damp stone, the echo of footsteps, the soft hum of water, and the unsettling sight of Isa or a figuria moving silently across the crates. The dockhouse endures as a structure caught between the land and the estuary, a home for the restless echoes of those who once worked and lived there. Each visitor becomes part of its ongoing story, sensing the life within the walls, hearing the splashes in the empty rooms, and glimpsing the pale man searching ceaselessly for a way out. Saltmarsh Dockhouse exists as a reminder that some places carry the weight of time, water, and memory, and that some presences persist long after the world outside has moved on. Ironhook Storage Wharf stretches along the edge of a misty harbor. A long, industrial structure of weathered timber and rusted metal. The chains that suspend the hooks hang thick and dark, disappearing into shadowed rafters far above the worn planks. Sunlight glints off the rust in brief flashes, giving the appearance of silver veins along the chains. But the air always feels heavy and damp, carrying the scent of saltwater and aged wood. During the day, Ironhook Wharf appears abandoned yet functional. The floorboards creak underfoot, and the faint wind carries the distant cries of seagulls. The hooks sway occasionally, responding to drafts or the subtle movement of air through the structure. Visitors passing through feel the weight of the place, the history etched into every beam and chain. The scale of the wharf is imposing, the massive hooks rising above anyone who walks beneath, a silent reminder of the labor and industry once carried out here. As night falls, the atmosphere changes dramatically. The wind dies down, and the harbor quiets, leaving only the faint lapping of water against the posts. It is during these hours that the hooks appear to move without explanation. They sway gently, sometimes in slow, deliberate arcs, with no draft or current strong enough to account for the motion. Observers often pause, staring upward at the enormous chains, sensing the shift in the air. The swaying hooks emit soft metallic creaks, low groans that echo along the timber beams. Travelers who linger at Ironhook Storage Wharf report another unsettling phenomenon. From somewhere above, a faint scraping or sliding sound begins along the chains. It is slow at first, measured, as though someone climbs deliberately, testing each link before moving higher. The steps create subtle vibrations that travel down the chains and across the wooden planks. At times, the sound seems impossibly close, as if the climber is directly above, though no figure is ever seen. Those who hear it describe a sensation of being watched, of weight descending from above, as though the presence itself is aware of their location on the wharf. The climbing sounds are inconsistent in timing. Some nights, they begin immediately after sunset, rising steadily for hours before fading. Other nights, the scraping starts without warning, drawing attention to sections of the chains that appear motionless during the day. Witnesses often feel compelled to look upward, following the dark vertical lines of chain into the shadows, but even the brightest lanterns reveal nothing. The air remains heavy, and the hooks continue to sway slowly, amplifying the sensation that something moves just beyond vision. The interior of the wharf adds to the unease. The timber beams overhead are thick and dark, crisscrossing the space in complex patterns. Shadows shift constantly under lantern light, blending with the chains and hooks in ways that distort perception. The creaking of old wood resonates loudly, amplified by the empty spaces beneath the lofted storage areas. Even minor movements by visitors produce echoes that mingle with the sounds of the swaying hooks, making it difficult to discern what is real and what is imagined. Local history sheds light on the origins of the structure but provides little explanation for the nocturnal phenomena. The massive hooks were forged specifically for the task, suspended by thick chains capable of supporting enormous weight. Iron Hook Wharf was constructed during the industrial boom, intended to handle cargo so heavy it could not be lifted manually. Records from workers indicate long nights spent securing cargo, climbing the chains to adjust rigging, and maintaining the hooks for safe operation. Many recount accidents that occurred during these climbs, some fatal. It is from these stories that legends of restless figures above the wharf first emerged. Witnesses have described feeling a subtle pull, as if the climbing presence senses their location. The scraping along the chain sometimes follows their movement across the wharf, stopping when they pause and resuming when they move again. The sensation is accompanied by a quiet, metallic thrum in the air, a vibration that travels along the hooks and chains. Travelers often note that the sound never descends to the water or floorboards directly, remaining above, tethered to the upper reaches of the structure. Despite attempts to capture the phenomena on camera, no definitive evidence has been recorded. Photographs often show empty hooks swaying in the dim light. Audio recordings pick up faint metallic creaks and subtle vibrations, but the climbing sounds themselves are inconsistent and often disappear when approached directly. These elusive qualities only add to the mystique of Iron Hook Storage Wharf, reinforcing the sense that the presence belongs to the chains themselves rather than the observers below. Visitors often leave the wharf with lingering impressions of the night. The swaying hooks, the subtle vibrations, and the faint scraping along the chains create an atmosphere of suspense and awareness. Even when the climbing stops, the memory of being watched persists. The empty chains, hanging from dark rafters, hold a history of labor, loss, and lingering mystery that seems to echo through the night. Iron Hook Storage Wharf endures as a place where history and mystery converge. Whether interpreted as remnants of past labor, legends passed down through generations, or something more elusive, the wharf continues to captivate those who step beneath its darkened chains, offering a silent story told through movement, sound, and shadow. Whether interpreted as remnants of past labor, legends passed down through generations, or something more elusive, the wharf continues to captivate those who step beneath its darkened chains, offering a silent story told through movement, sound, and shadow. Offering a silent story told through movement, sound, and shadow. Iron Hook Storage Wharf endures as a place where history and mystery converge. Grey-tide cargo haul at the edge of an abandoned dockyard, where rusted cranes lean against the sky and the smell of saltwater hangs heavy in the air, stands a vast warehouse known as Grey-tide Cargo Hall. Its steel frame stretches upward, old beams sagging slightly with age. The corrugated metal siding has dulled to a muted gray, giving the building a somber presence even under clear skies. Windows are grimy or broken, allowing faint shafts of light to spill inside during the day, revealing stacks of forgotten crates and pallets covered in dust. The structure appears ordinary at first glance, but those who venture inside quickly sense that it holds secrets far beyond its industrial appearance. The building fills with fog even on clear nights. Visitors often describe stepping through the open doors into a thick, white haze that seems to rise from the floor itself. The fog is dense enough to obscure the far corners of the hall, creating an impression of limitless space. It moves slowly, curling around crates and piling high against the steel support columns. There is no source of moisture that explains it, no nearby bodies of water or climate conditions sufficient to generate fog so heavy. Within this fog, shadows move. They are not cast by visible objects or figures. Instead, they appear as shifting forms, dark and indistinct, drifting along the edges of vision. Visitors report glimpsing shapes slipping between stacks of crates or floating above the floor, disappearing the instant they attempt to focus on them. The shadows have no discernible pattern or origin, yet they move with an awareness that feels purposeful. Some observers claim the forms mimic their movements, following as they walk through the hall, while others describe shadows that dart across the fog independently, as though patrolling the space. The hall's interior amplifies these sensations. Sounds echo sharply across the metal walls, distorted by the vast, empty space. Footsteps sound heavier than they should, and the faint creak of overhead beams resonates far longer than expected. The fog itself absorbs and refracts light, creating strange illusions of depth and scale. A crate may appear much closer or further than it is. A shadow that seems distant may suddenly loom nearby. These distortions make the hall feel unpredictable and alive, challenging the visitor's sense of orientation and perception. Perhaps the most infamous event associated with gray tide occurs at midnight. A heavy thud reverberates through the hall, as if something enormous has fallen from the rafters. The sound is powerful, shaking crates and rattling steel beams. Yet when explorers rush to the source, they find nothing. No fallen objects, no evidence of structural failure, no sign of what could have produced the impact. The thud seems to come from the rafters themselves, from high above the fog, and yet the ceiling remains undisturbed. The sound is both terrifying and inexplicable, leaving witnesses with a lingering sense of unease. Local legends attempt to explain the fog and shadows. Some say the hall was built over a deep, underground waterway that seeps moisture into the air, creating the thick mist. Others suggest that the warehouse occupies land with unusual magnetic properties, bending light and perception. Many of the older tales are more ominous, claiming that the hall is haunted by workers who died in accidents during its construction or by mysterious cargo that was never delivered. According to these stories, the shadows are not mere tricks of the light but remnants of those lost in the hall, moving silently through the fog they once walked. Researchers have studied the hall, but even scientific investigation yields limited answers. Air sampling shows no unusual condensation levels that could explain the persistent fog. Acoustic analysis accounts for echoes but cannot account for the sudden, isolated thuds at midnight. Cameras capture the mist, yet the shadows are rarely visible in recordings, suggesting the phenomenon interacts with human perception in ways not fully understood. Despite these attempts at explanation, the hall continues to defy conventional understanding, leaving a sense of mystery intact. Visitors who spend time in Gray Tide Cargo Hall describe a unique mixture of fascination and apprehension. Walking through the fog feels like moving through another dimension. Every step is measured, every sound amplified, shadows flicker at the edge of perception, and the mind begins to question whether movement or sound is real or imagined. Those present during the midnight thud report a simultaneous rush of adrenaline and awe, a feeling that something immense and unseen is present, observing or interacting with the environment. These experiences are vivid and memorable, leaving a lasting impression long after leaving the hall. The architecture of Gray Tide contributes to the hall's uncanny atmosphere. The high roof allows the fog to drift and pool, forming layers that shift unpredictably. Stacks of abandoned crates, pallets, and equipment serve as visual anchors that both reveal and conceal the moving shadows. Even in daylight, the hall feels cavernous and disorienting, but at night, under fog and in near silence, it becomes a place where the ordinary rules of space and sound seem suspended. Some visitors report additional subtle phenomena. Cold drafts curl along the floor and climb up the legs of crates. Occasional taps, knocks, or whispers echo from high above, blending seamlessly with the fog. Observers sometimes feel watched, though they cannot locate any source. These sensations combine with the visible movement of shadows and the unpredictable sounds to create a profound sense of presence, suggesting the hall is occupied by forces beyond ordinary perception. Despite the strangeness, Greytide Cargo Hall continues to attract those drawn by its mysteries. Photographers, paranormal enthusiasts, and explorers come seeking to witness the fog, the shadows, and the infamous midnight thud. Each person reports experiences slightly different, yet the patterns persist: thick mist rising without explanation, shadowed forms moving among the stacks, and a sound that shakes the structure at precisely the same hour. Greytide Cargo Hall endures as a place where natural expectation meets the inexplicable. Its fog transforms clear nights into disorienting landscapes. Shadows drift with intent, and the deep, resonant thud of midnight challenges logic. The hall remains a compelling testament to spaces where perception, history, and mystery intertwine. Those who enter emerge with a sense of awe, unsettled but captivated, carrying the experience with them as an enduring memory of a place where the ordinary becomes extraordinary in the quiet presence of fog, shadow, and sound. Wittawa's Wharf Depot rests at the edge of a weathered harbor where the salt-laden air carries the faint creak of timbers and the distant call of gulls. Once a bustling station for fishermen and sailors, the depot served as the lifeline between the sea and the town. Ships would return with their catches, passengers would disembark, and families would reunite on the worn wooden platforms. Over time, however, the wharf fell into disuse. Storms eroded the piers, the rail lines rusted, and the depot became a silent monument to those who once worked and waited there. Yet it has never been empty. The depot carries a weight that can be felt from the moment one steps onto the creaking boards outside. The air is thick with the scent of brine and old timber. Windows, many cracked and fogged by decades of salt and rain, reflect the fading light of evening in eerie patterns. Locals know its history well, and the name Wittawa's Wharf was given to honor the women who lost husbands to the sea, men who vanished during storms or never returned from their voyages. Their grief, it is said, remains embedded in the walls and floors of the building, shaping the presence that lingers. Their figures appear in the windows, waiting. During twilight, visitors report glimpsing shadowed forms standing silently behind the glass. The figures are tall, dressed in long garments that sway faintly as though caught by a breeze within the room. They do not move beyond the window frame, yet the sense of awareness is undeniable. Eyes, dark and fixed, seem to follow every step across the wharf. Some guests who arrive near sunset find that the figures vanish if approached directly, only to reappear moments later when viewed from a different angle. Their presence is patient, unhurried, as though bound to an eternal vigil for loved ones lost to the sea. Inside the depot, the effect of the lingering spirits grows stronger after nightfall. Soft weeping drifts through the hall after dark. The sound is low and mournful, a gentle lament carried across the wooden floors and rafters. At first, it is difficult to locate, as though the building itself is breathing the sorrow. This is the only way to describe the sorrow that permeates the depot, a feeling of deep melancholy. With patience, the source becomes clearer, a voice or chorus of voices that seem to arise from the empty benches, the ticket counter, or the corners of the waiting rooms. The weeping varies in intensity, sometimes barely audible, barely stirring the silence, other times filling the space with a weight that presses upon the chest. Visitors who explore the interior often notice the effect of the depot's history in subtle ways. Doors creak open slowly even when no wind blows. Wooden floors seem to shift underfoot in response to movement that cannot be seen. Shadows appear elongated along walls, stretching unnaturally across old signage and faded murals. The longer one remains, the stronger the sense grows that the building remembers. Each echo of footsteps, each whisper of the sea outside, is registered and reflected by the depot in ways that seem almost deliberate. Some who have stayed overnight report feeling the presence of the widows more acutely in the sleeping areas or former ticket offices. The sensation is never threatening but profoundly intimate, as though the watchers wish to be acknowledged. One visitor recounted lying on the worn wooden floor, listening to the weeping drift through the hall, and feeling the faint brush of air across her face, as if a hand had passed inches above her. The sound of quiet sobs continued well into the early hours, fading only as the first light of dawn touched the harbor. The windows themselves appear almost sentient. The figures within often shift position in subtle ways that suggest attention to movement outside. A visitor standing on the dock once described turning away for a moment, then finding a widower's figure pressed closer to the glass upon looking back. Others report that the figures are never exact duplicates of each sighting. Sometimes one appears alone, other times multiple forms line the panes. And their positions never repeat exactly. The observation has led many to believe that each spirit acts independently, responding to the world outside in a way that mirrors the unpredictability of the sea itself. Sounds of the harbor also interact with the haunting presence. The soft slap of waves against the pilings, the occasional tolling of a distant bell, and the creak of boards swaying in the tide all combine with the weeping to create a layered, atmospheric experience. The mournful voices seem to synchronize with the rhythms of the water, rising and falling in cadence with the tide. Visitors often report a sense of immersion, as though they are not merely observing the spirits but are present within the memory of loss that lingers in the building and along the shore. Local tradition warns against lingering too long near the depot at night. Tales of visitors who felt unable to leave, of those who experienced vivid dreams of being watched from the windows, circulate quietly among townspeople. Many believe that the widows are drawn not only to mourn their lost husbands but to protect the memories of those who worked on the wharf. The depot, in turn, has become a repository of grief, a place where time and memory converge into a palpable presence that cannot be ignored. For those willing to witness it, Widowa's Wharf Depot offers an experience that is both haunting and beautiful. The combination of history, architecture, and the lingering spirits creates a space where the past is never truly gone. The figures in the windows, the soft weeping through the halls, and the gentle creak of boards form a symphony of memory and loss. The depot stands as a testament to those who waited, and to the enduring connection between the living and those who were claimed by the sea. On quiet nights, when the moon hangs low above the harbor, one can hear the soft lament of the widows. Their forms remain in the windows, silent but watchful, while the water laps against the old pilings below. And in that stillness, the legacy of the depot becomes clear. A place defined by absence, shaped by memory, and alive with the presence of those who never returned. Old Anchorhouse Storage stands at the edge of a quiet harbor. Its weathered timbers and thick stone walls bearing the scars of decades of storms and salt-laden winds. The Building's FAA section ade is marked by rusted hinges and heavy wooden doors that creak under their own weight. Anchors of every size line the walls inside, their iron forms darkened by age and exposure, standing rigid and silent like ancient gravestones commemorating forgotten voyages. The air carries a faint tang of brine and rust, mingling with the lingering scent of damp wood and seaweed. Visitors often feel a chill upon entering, as though the building itself exhales the long history of the harbor it has served. Inside, the storage hall is vast, stretching far enough to give the feeling of wandering through an underground cavern. The anchors, arranged haphazardly yet deliberate in their placement, cast jagged shadows across the walls when a lantern is held aloft. The floorboards are thick and uneven, worn smooth in places by centuries of movement. Even during the day, the interior feels dim, the muted light emphasizing the coldness of the iron and stone. Every step echoes loudly, bouncing off walls and timbers, giving the impression that the building listens and responds to each visitor. Late at night, the silence of the hall is often broken by the sound of metal dragging across the floor. Then it grows louder, moving rhythmically in different parts of the hall. The scraping echoes sharply, reverberating through the structure and making the walls themselves seem to shiver. Visitors who hear it often report holding their breath, stepping lightly to avoid drawing attention, yet the sound does not cease. The sound does not cease. It moves independently, unbound by any visible presence, and can occur in multiple locations at once. Some witnesses describe the sensation as more than auditory. The sound of dragging metal often carries with it a subtle vibration. Felt in the soles of their feet and through the palms when hands brush against the cold iron. The experience leaves a lingering awareness that the anchors are not simply stationary relics of the past, but objects still aware of the activity around them. Attempts to locate the source are rarely successful. When a visitor approaches one of the anchors, the scraping seems to continue elsewhere. Always just beyond the line of sight. Another strange phenomenon occurs when visitors remain in the storage hall through the night. Some awaken to find fresh water pooled beneath their feet, often in small, irregular patches that have no apparent origin. The water is cold, clear, and reflective, spreading across the floor as if responding to unseen movements. No pipes, leaks, or natural sources have ever been identified, yet the puddles form consistently during overnight visits. Guests report the water appearing silently, sometimes following footsteps, and evaporating by the morning without trace. The combination of dragging metal and sudden pools of water creates a sense that old anchor house storage is alive with unseen activity. Some speculate that the anchors themselves hold memories of the ships they once secured, reliving journeys and storms through sound and movement. Others believe the building harbors the spirits of sailors long past, their presence lingering among the cold iron and wooden beams, performing actions that cannot be explained by the natural world. Explorers who linger long enough describe a heightened awareness in the hull. Sounds that are imperceptible elsewhere, soft creaks, faint drips, the clink of chainsaw becomes sharply defined. Shadows deepen and shift, sometimes in response to movement, sometimes independently. Many report a feeling of being observed, not by a person, but by an entity that watches from within the iron anchors themselves. This sensation is subtle at first, a peripheral awareness, but intensifies as one ventures further into the hull. One visitor recounted stepping carefully along the main aisle, when he heard a prolonged scraping from the far corner of the hull. Lantern light revealed nothing moving, yet when he looked away and back, the position of the nearest anchor had shifted slightly. The scrape resumed from a different section, echoing across the hull, leaving him unsure if he had seen a trick of the light or an actual movement. Another traveler described waking at midnight to find her boots wet, the puddles reflecting dim lantern light. She traced her steps back to the entryway, and the water had receded, leaving the floor dry again. Despite the unsettling phenomena, old anchor house storage remains a place of fascination. Its anchors stand as silent sentinels, marking the passage of time and the labor of countless hands. The dragging metal, the shadows, and the mysterious water lend the building an atmosphere of ancient memory, as though the space itself preserves the echoes of the past. Visitors leave with a mixture of awe and unease, carrying with them the sounds, sensations, and lingering presence that seem to inhabit the hull long after their departure. Old anchor house storage endures as a structure caught between land and sea, between the memory of work and the persistence of history. Anchors stand like ancient gravestones, shadows cling to corners, and water rises inexplicably beneath the feet of those who dare to stay. Anchors stand like ancient gravestones, shadows cling to corners, and water rises inexplicably beneath the feet of those who dare to stay. Anchors stand like ancient gravestones, shadows cling to corners, and water rises inexplicably beneath the feet of those who dare to stay. The building continues to hold its secrets, inviting those brave enough to walk its creaking floors and listen to the stories whispered in the scrape of iron against wood. The building continues to hold its secrets, inviting those brave enough to walk its creaking floors and listen to the stories whispered in the scrape of iron against wood. The building continues to hold its secrets, inviting those brave enough to walk its creaking floors and listen to the stories whispered in the scrape of iron against wood. Stormwake Export Bay sits at the edge of a restless coastline. where dark waters churn beneath jagged piers, and constant wind sweeps across the warehouses. Its location, exposed to open skies and powerful storms, has given the site a reputation unlike any other. Among all the buildings, one warehouse stands out. It bears the unusual distinction of being struck by lightning more often than any other structure in the area, drawing both curiosity and caution from those who approach. During the day, the warehouse appears unremarkable. Its steel framework glints in the sun, and the surrounding docks hum with distant industrial sounds. The metal railings and beams reflect sunlight sharply, and the air carries a faint tang of saltwater. The structure feels sturdy, built to withstand the frequent storms that sweep across the bay. Yet visitors cannot ignore the sense of tension that seems to linger. As though the building itself holds a memory of the countless strikes it has endured over the years. As evening falls, the atmosphere becomes charged. The wind increases, carrying with it the scent of rain and the low rumble of distant waves. Occasionally, the sky darkens prematurely, a heavy gray blanket that seems to signal an approaching storm even on otherwise clear nights. It is during these hours that subtle electrical activity begins to manifest along the warehouse railings. Faint blue sparks flicker along the metal, jumping across connections with a soft hiss that resonates through the empty dock. The sparks illuminate the surfaces in brief flashes, casting sharp, angular shadows that stretch across the planks and concrete below. Those who linger at the bay describe the electrical glow as both mesmerizing and unnerving. The light pulses in irregular patterns, never fully predictable, as though the building itself is responding to something unseen. In the sudden flashes of blue light, observers often report seeing silhouettes standing along the railings or near the edges of the warehouse. The figures are always indistinct, appearing and disappearing in rhythm with the electrical sparks. They do not move in conventional ways. Sometimes they seem to pause mid-step, frozen by the glow, only to vanish when the light fades. The silhouettes appear mostly during nights of heightened activity, particularly when lightning storms sweep across the bay. Observers often describe a sense of presence, a feeling that someone or something watches from the warehouse as the storm rages. The figures do not interact, speak, or gesture. Instead, they move slowly or stand still, framed in the brief illumination of sparks or distant lightning. Some visitors note that the silhouettes seem aware of their own movement, pacing in subtle, repetitive patterns along the railings, tracing the same paths over and over. Inside the warehouse, the atmosphere mirrors the tension outside. Steel beams stretch overhead, carrying the weight of the roof and echoing the faint hum of electrical energy coursing along the metal structures. When the sparks flicker along the railings, their light penetrates the open spaces, casting long, fractured shadows that twist along the walls. Even the sound of the wind outside seems magnified, resonating through the hollow structure in low, vibrating tones. Lightning strikes are particularly dramatic. When a bolt hits nearby, the warehouse vibrates, sending a low metallic hum through the beams and railings. The sparks along the railings flare dramatically, illuminating the entire space in blue-white light. Observers report that during these moments, the silhouettes become more visible, their outlines sharper and more defined. The figures sometimes appear to move with the rhythm of the electrical discharges, pacing in time with the surges, as though energized by the raw power flowing through the structure. Over the years, engineers and storm chasers have studied Stormwake Export Bay to understand why this warehouse attracts so much electrical activity. Its steel framework, elevated position, and exposed location create natural conditions for frequent strikes. Its steel framework, elevated position, and exposed location create natural conditions for frequent strikes. Yet even experts are unsettled by the appearance of the silhouettes and the way the sparks seem to dance unpredictably. Attempts to capture the figures on camera or with sensors often fail. Photographs show empty railings, recordings capture the electrical hum, but the silhouettes rarely appear in images, leaving only witness testimony to describe their presence. Photographs show empty railings, recordings capture the electrical hum. But the silhouettes rarely appear in images, leaving only witness testimony to describe their presence. Local lore offers additional perspective. Long before the modern shipping era, the bay was said to be a meeting place for early sailors and dockworkers who relied on lanterns and signaling to guide ships through the rough waters. Some stories speak of workers caught in storms, lost or struck by lightning, their spirits lingering among the beams and railings. Whether legend or memory, the stories persist because so many witnesses describe the same phenomena repeatedly. Visitors who spend the night at the bay often describe a heightened awareness during storms. The blue sparks flicker unexpectedly, illuminating surfaces in ways that feel intimate and deliberate. The silhouettes appear close enough to sense their presence, yet distant enough to remain intangible. Some report the sensation of being followed or observed while walking along the docks. Hearing the soft hum of electricity under their feet, and feeling the vibrations along the railings through their hands. These experiences create a sense of connection between the warehouse, the storm, and the figures in the glow. As dawn approaches, the electrical activity diminishes. The sparks along the railings fade. And the silhouettes disappear. With the final flashes of lightning, the warehouse returns to its daytime quiet, appearing ordinary once more. Yet those who witnessed the phenomena leave with vivid memories of a building alive with energy and presence. A place where storms and electricity reveal shapes and movements that exist just beyond comprehension. Stormwake Export Bay endures as a place of power and mystery. Its constant lightning strikes, flickering blue sparks, and shifting silhouettes offer a unique spectacle that draws curiosity, awe, and cautious respect. Visitors leave with the impression that the warehouse is more than steel and timber. A structure that interacts with storms, energy, and perhaps something beyond sight. Preserving a story of light, shadow, and restless presence. Driftline Cargo Pier. At the edge of a fog-laden harbor, where the water laps silently against weathered pilings, lies Driftline Cargo Pier. Its wooden planks creak under every step, aged by salt, wind, and decades of heavy cargo traffic. Rusted beams support the dock above the churning tide, and the smell of brine permeates the air. By day, the pier functions like any other, a place of loading and unloading, of shipping crates and passing workers. But when the sun sets and the fog rolls in from the water, Driftline Cargo Pier transforms into something altogether different. A place where the ordinary becomes unsettling and familiar routines are interrupted by the inexplicable. One of the first signs that something is amiss comes from the wooden planks themselves. Workers report hearing the boards shift beneath footsteps no living person makes. The sound is unmistakable, soft, deliberate, echoing along the length of the pier in patterns that mimic walking. Yet when the source is investigated, the planks remain empty. No shadow, no figure, not even the ripple of a passing animal disturbs the foggy deck. The steps continue sporadically, appearing on one end of the pier and disappearing toward the other, leaving behind a sense of presence without a body, a rhythm that hints at intent. Boxes and crates stored along the pier offer another clue to the mysterious activity. Each morning, workers arrive to find that items have shifted position. Heavy crates that were stacked neatly in the evening are often found tilted, moved to a different corner, or resting as if someone carefully rearranged them. Nothing appears to be missing, and no signs of forced movement are present. The changes are precise, almost deliberate, as though an unseen hand moves through the pier in the quiet hours, performing tasks unseen by human eyes. Those who notice these shifts speak of the sensation as both disconcerting and strangely methodical, as if the pier itself maintains some hidden order. Perhaps the most unsettling experience reported at Driftline Cargo Pier occurs in the late hours of the night. Some workers refuse to enter alone due to whispers coming from the far corner of the dock. These whispers are soft, indistinct murmurs that seem to drift on the mist rolling off the water. They are neither entirely human nor entirely mechanical. Sometimes they rise in volume briefly, only to fade into silence. The voices are said to call attention to specific areas of the pier, following a visitor along the foggy planks and drawing focus toward crates or shadowed recesses. The whispers carry no discernible words, yet they convey a palpable sense of presence, of something aware of those who tread the deck. The fog itself plays a critical role in the pier's atmosphere. Thick and unrelenting, it clings to the water and climbs onto the wooden planks, distorting vision and absorbing sound. Distant objects appear closer or farther than they truly are. Shadows form and dissolve within the mist, creating fleeting shapes that seem almost human. Even familiar objects are transformed by the fog into ambiguous silhouettes, leaving the mind uncertain of what is real and what is conjured by the shifting light. The fog amplifies every creak, every whisper, every subtle movement, enhancing the feeling that the pier is alive in its own way. Visitors to the pier often describe a progression of sensations as they move along its length. At first, the fog obscures vision, lending an air of quiet solitude. The faint murmur of water and distant machinery is present but muted. Then the planks shift under non-existent footsteps, producing a tension that sets the skin on edge. Shadows emerge from the mist and disappear before they can be fully observed. The whispers rise, brushing against the mind like a cold draft, suggesting attention from something unseen. Local lore surrounding Driftline Cargo Pier offers possible explanations for the phenomena. Some claim the area was built atop a network of abandoned warehouses and hidden channels, which could amplify sound and create the illusion of footsteps and whispers. Others tell stories of dockworkers who vanished without explanation decades ago, their spirits said to linger along the foggy planks, maintaining routines from life long past. While these stories remain unverified, they contribute to the mystique of the location, adding a sense of continuity between the past and the present. Even scientific approaches to the pier provide limited answers. Acoustics experts can replicate some of the effects of fog on sound, noting how mist can carry and distort noises. Structural engineers acknowledge that wooden planks shift slightly with changes in temperature and moisture. However, neither explanation fully accounts for the timing, consistency, and deliberate patterns of movement and sound reported by workers. The combination of fog, whispers, and subtle physical shifts continues to defy conventional understanding. Those who venture onto Driftline Cargo Pier at night quickly learn to move cautiously. Each step is deliberate, eyes scanning the fog for shadows or anomalies. Many report an instinctive awareness of being watched, a sense that movement occurs just beyond the edges of perception. The subtle creak of planks under phantom footsteps keeps visitors alert, while the whispers guide attention to corners otherwise overlooked. The repeated observation of shifted crates and carefully rearranged objects adds to the impression that the pier maintains a watchful presence, attentive to activity yet unseen. As dawn approaches, the fog begins to thin, the whispers fade, and the planks settle into quiet stillness. The world of ordinary sounds returns with the rising sun, and the mysterious patterns vanish with the mist. Yet the memory of the night lingers. The pier remains alive in memory, a space where perception and reality blur. Driftline Cargo Pier endures as a location of intrigue and unease. Its fog transforms the familiar into the unknown. Shadows and whispers unsettle the senses. And the shifting planks and moved crates suggest a presence beyond human observation. Those who traverse its boards at night carry the weight of the experience. A mixture of fascination and caution. Aware that the pier harbors mysteries that remain elusive, silent and ever-present in the fog. Drowned Delaware warehouse sits along a forgotten dock where the tide laps quietly against rotting timbers and the scent of brine hangs heavy in the air. The building is vast and square, constructed of weathered wood and iron beams, a relic from a time when the port bustled with trade and sailors carried goods to distant shores. Its name is grim, born from tragedy, yet the stories that linger within its walls are far darker than the simple loss of life. Those who approach the warehouse report an overwhelming sense of anticipation, as though the building itself waits for visitors to witness its secrets. The air around the warehouse carries a damp chill that seeps into clothing and skin. Inside, shadows stretch long across the creaking floorboards and stacks of crates that rise in uneven rows, leaving narrow corridors between them. The scent of old sea water mingles with mildew and rust, creating an atmosphere that is both oppressive and alive. Light enters sparingly through cracked windows and warped panels, casting muted reflections on the wet floors and glimmering against metal bindings. They are tall and humanoid, their outlines blurred by the haze of moisture that clings to the air. Their movements are slow and deliberate, gliding rather than walking, leaving no sound except the faint patter of water droplets hitting the wood. Witnesses report that the figures look as though they have just stepped out of the sea, water cascading from hair, sleeves, and trousers, dripping relentlessly onto the floor. Sometimes they leave puddles that stretch toward the exit. These puddles appear without explanation, spreading across the floor as the figures move. The water gleams faintly in low light, reflecting the scattered beams of daylight, and creating illusions of movement beyond what is visible. The puddles are cold to the touch, chilling the soles of shoes. And they often trace the path that the figures have taken, leading in winding lines toward doors or gaps between crates. Visitors describe following these wet trails with a mix of curiosity and apprehension, knowing that something unseen has passed just moments before. The warehouse amplifies sound in strange ways. The drip of water from the figures echoes through the cavernous space. The groan of old beams. The soft rustle of packing materials. Steps taken on the wet floor sound louder than they should. Yet visitors frequently report hearing additional footsteps, distant and irregular. Sometimes the echoes resemble muted calls or murmurs, carrying across the rows of crates, as though the space itself remembers each sailor lost to the water. Explorers have described the figures appearing in the periphery of vision, vanishing when confronted directly. Shadows shift unnaturally, and the corners of the warehouse seem deeper than their structure would allow. Some visitors have noted that the dripping water creates strange reflections on walls and crates, briefly revealing images of sailors long gone, their features pale and drawn, eyes dark and hollow. Others claim to see shapes of lanterns floating through the mist, casting no real light but illuminating the figures in surreal clarity. The origin of the phenomena is tied to the warehouse's history. Generations ago, it served as a storage and docking point for cargo arriving from perilous sea routes. During violent storms, several ships sank just offshore, and sailors carrying goods never returned. Some say the warehouse became a repository not only for lost goods but for the memories and unrest of those who perished. The figures are thought to be the spirits of drowned sailors, compelled to roam the space where their final work might have concluded, trapped between life and whatever lies beyond. Visitors who linger often describe physical sensations that accompany the visions. Cold drafts seem to follow their movements, even when windows and doors are closed. Moisture collects unexpectedly on clothing or hair. Some feel brief pressure on the shoulders or back as if brushed past by a passing figure. The warehouse feels alive, responsive, and yet indifferent, preserving the echo of tragedy without explanation or warning. One guest reported following a puddle trail to the far door of the warehouse. As he approached, a dripping figure emerged between crates and glided silently toward him, stopping only a few feet away. The water from its clothing pooled at his feet, spreading cold tendrils along the worn floor. The figure remained motionless, then slowly receded back into the shadows, leaving the visitor shaken and chilled, yet unharmed. Another explorer described hearing faint whispers in the distance, faint enough to seem like the wind at first. The voices appeared to shift and move with the figures, a low murmuring that echoed against the crates and ceiling beams. The sound was rhythmic, almost as though the sailors were recalling routines from their lives, tending to cargo, preparing for departures, or bidding farewell to the shore. The sound faded quickly, leaving a profound silence that made the emptiness of the warehouse feel heavier than the presence of the figures. Despite the unsettling experiences, the warehouse retains a strange allure. Its architecture, the alignment of crates, and the muted glow of water reflections create a cinematic, almost hypnotic atmosphere. Visitors are drawn to witness the phenomena, to understand the space where past and present intermingle. And to walk along the wet trails left by figures whose lives ended in tragedy. Drowned sailors. The figures continue to glide, leaving puddles that trace their movement. The soft dripping of water. And occasional whispers echo across the warehouse, carrying the weight of stories untold and lives interrupted by the unforgiving sea. Remains persistent and unwavering within the shadowed corridors of drowned sailors. Eastwind Harbor Vault rests at the edge of a jagged coastline where powerful coastal winds clash with the chill of night air. The structure is solid and imposing, built from thick stone blocks that have weathered decades of storms, salt spray, and relentless tides. Its heavy doors are reinforced with rusted iron bands, and the walls bear the faint marks of water erosion and age. Even in daylight, the vault seems to exude an aura of quiet vigilance, a place meant to protect and conceal, holding secrets within its cold interior. The air around the vault is always in motion. Gusts whip along the shoreline, carrying the tang of brine and the distant cry of seabirds. Travelers approaching the entrance notice the way the wind seems to twist around the corners of the building, funneling through gaps and cracks in ways that are at once natural and strange. The sound of wind, combined with the isolation of the harbor, gives the structure a sense of being both part of the coast and entirely separate, an entity unto itself. Inside, the vault maintains a cool, unyielding darkness. Thick stone walls absorb what little light enters through narrow slits in the doors. The interior feels hollow yet resonant, each footstep echoing with a clarity that emphasizes the emptiness. Dust motes hang in the dim glow of lanterns, drifting slowly through the cold air. The atmosphere is heavy, and the silence is profound, broken only by the occasional creak of the floor or the faint whistle of wind seeping through tiny gaps. It is at night when Eastwind Harbor Vault truly comes alive with mystery. Explorers often report hearing voices floating through the cracks in the doors. At first, the sounds are soft, indistinct murmurs, barely audible over the wind. They appear to originate from the stone itself, seeping through the structure in a way that feels almost deliberate. As listeners focus, the murmurs sometimes take shape as whispers, fragments of words that hint at human presence but never fully cohere. The effect is haunting, as though the vault itself is speaking in a tongue just beyond comprehension. Some travelers have claimed the voices are not merely echoes, but invitations. They describe hearing a soft, insistent call, urging them to come closer, to enter deeper into the vault. They are low and measured, patient, growing slightly louder when the listener hesitates, then fading into silence if ignored. The sensation is disorienting, leaving explorers questioning whether the sounds come from the outside, from within the walls, or from someplace entirely unseen. Inside the main chamber, the space feels both expansive and constricted. The stone walls curve subtly, creating pockets where sound gathers and amplifies. Footsteps that echo in one corner can appear to originate from another entirely. Explorers moving through the vault often sense this displacement, feeling as if something unseen is shadowing their movement. The air is cool and carries the faint scent of the sea, mingled with the mineral tang of stone. Even in stillness, the vault feels alive, its emptiness resonant with the energy of past visitors and unspoken histories. Those who venture further describe the doors themselves as conduits for the mysterious voices. Small cracks and gaps seem to concentrate the sound, directing whispers toward certain areas of the room. A traveler standing near one slit may hear a voice clearly enough to make out the cadence, yet unable to distinguish words. Step away, and the voice fades, replaced by silence or the subtle rush of wind. It is as though the building itself knows where to send the sound, controlling what the visitor perceives. Occasionally, explorers have witnessed faint visual phenomena accompanying the sounds. Shadows appear to shift at the edges of lantern light, or reflections in damp stone surfaces seem to form vague, human-like shapes. The movement is subtle and fleeting, disappearing when approached or when light is redirected. These glimpses add to the sense that the vault is inhabited by something not entirely visible, something that remains aware of every presence within its walls. One visitor recounted standing near a cracked door late at night. The wind howled outside, but through the narrow opening came a soft voice, almost melodic in its cadence. It seemed to urge him forward, drawing him closer to the vault's interior. He stepped cautiously, and the voice stopped abruptly, leaving only the sound of his own breathing and the distant crash of waves. Another traveler described hearing the whispers shift location as she moved through the chamber, the sound always ahead of her, as if guiding her without showing a path. Despite the eerie experiences, Eastwind Harbor Vault is not overtly threatening. The voices and subtle movements create tension, curiosity, and awe rather than fear. Visitors often feel a strange respect for the structure, sensing that it is a keeper of history and mystery, preserving echoes that do not belong solely to the present. The vault invites observation, attentiveness, and patience, rewarding those who listen carefully to the interplay of wind, stone, and sound. Explorers leave with impressions that linger long after departing the harbor. They recall the low, patient whispers through the cracks. The way shadows twist and bend in the corner of their vision. And the magnetic pull that seemed to draw them deeper into the stone. The vault remains silent to the casual passerby. But to those who step inside at night, it is a place alive with presence, memory, and subtle communication. Eastwind Harbor Vault endures as a monument to the unseen. It is a building where coastal winds converge with cold night air. Where voices float through narrow cracks. And where explorers feel the tug of something just beyond perception. It stands on the edge of the world. Caught between land and sea. Inviting the curious to listen closely, to step carefully, and to witness the mysteries that linger quietly within its stone walls. Black Barrel Freight House stands at the edge of a quiet industrial district, a long, low warehouse built from dark timber and corrugated metal. Its windows are small and grimy, letting in only streaks of light that illuminate dust motes floating in the air. Inside, the space is filled with massive barrels stacked from floor to ceiling, their wooden staves swollen with age and sealed with heavy iron hoops. Some have sat untouched for decades, their contents unknown and their surfaces marked by the passage of time. The warehouse smells faintly of oak, metal, and something colder, something that lingers just beneath perception. During the day, the barrels appear inert, silent guardians of forgotten cargo. Visitors walking among them hear only the creak of boards beneath their feet, the distant hum of the city beyond the warehouse walls, and the faint echo of their own movement. It is easy to imagine the weight they carry, the stories of commerce and labor embedded in their construction. Yet at night, the atmosphere of Black Barrel Freight House changes. The air becomes heavier, cooler, and the barrels seem less inert. Some visitors report hearing faint scraping sounds emanating from within them. The noises are subtle at first, like the movement of small objects shifting under pressure. Then, over time, the scraping grows more distinct, echoing softly off the walls and ceiling. Walkers through the warehouse pause, their footsteps stilled by the sound, straining to locate its source. It never comes from a predictable barrel or direction. On one particularly cold night, witnesses describe an event that has become part of the warehouse's enduring mystery. A single barrel, large and sealed tightly for decades, cracked open without warning. The sound was sharp, cutting through the usual warehouse silence. Those present rushed to inspect it, expecting perhaps debris or evidence of decay. Instead, the barrel was empty. No cargo, no animal, no trace of disturbance. Only a rush of cold air escaped from within, carrying with it a sharp scent of metal and damp timber. The experience left an unsettling impression, as though the warehouse itself had exhaled a hidden breath into the space. The scraping sounds and occasional barrel disturbances are not isolated. Some speak of nights when scraping echoes from barrels stacked in the far corner, distant yet clear enough to suggest movement from deep within. As though an unseen presence explores the interior under cover of darkness. And the barrels remain sealed and undisturbed during daytime inspection. Walking among the barrels amplifies the atmosphere. Each stack casts tall shadows, creating narrow corridors through which visitors must navigate. The floorboards creak unevenly, responding to every step. The scale of the barrels makes it easy to feel dwarfed, as though the warehouse is not only full of cargo but also alive with hidden energy. Even without the scraping, the long silence is heavy, punctuated only by the occasional drip of condensation from the ceiling or the distant hum of the city beyond the walls. Local history provides some context but no definitive answers. Black Barrel Freight House was built during a period of intense trade, its barrels used to transport chemicals, grain, and other industrial goods. Records suggest that some shipments were abandoned due to spoilage, while others remained sealed for safety or legal reasons. Over the years, workers reported minor incidenza barrels shifting unexpectedly, unexplained noises, but none were fully documented. These accounts, combined with the more recent observations of scraping and spontaneous barrel openings, have given the warehouse a reputation among locals as a place of unease and mystery. Visitors who stay overnight often describe heightened senses. The scraping sounds seem louder in absolute silence, echoing down the long rows of barrels. Shadows twist as the faint light from small windows or lanterns interacts with the stacked timber. The air carries a chill, heavier than the temperature alone would suggest, and every movement produces a subtle response from the structure. The warehouse feels responsive, almost sentient, aware of those who walk among the barrels. Attempts to capture the phenomena have yielded limited results. Cameras pick up empty barrels. Microphones record faint creaks and pops. Yet nothing fully explains the scraping or sudden openings. Electrical monitoring shows no activity that could account for the sounds. Each attempt adds to the sense that the warehouse itself is the source of its mystery. That the barrels, long sealed and forgotten, hold some form of energy or memory waiting to be glimpsed. When morning arrives, the warehouse returns to its daytime quiet. The barrels sit silent, the floorboards hold only human footprints. And the air loses its chill. Yet those who witnessed the events at night carry the memory of scraping and sudden openings. And the tension that filled the empty corridors. Black Barrel Freight House endures as a place of silent mystery, where massive barrels contain not only long-forgotten cargo but also the weight of the unknown. Its scraping sounds, spontaneous openings, and shifting air offer a haunting spectacle that defies full explanation. Visitors leave with a lasting impression, aware that the warehouse holds secrets far deeper than its visible contents, secrets that may stir only when the night falls and the silence of the barrels becomes alive. Along the edge of a quiet harbor, where the water glints under the moonlight, stands a long, narrow warehouse built upon a dock that curves gently like a crescent moon. The structure stretches along the bend of the pier, its weathered wood and rusted beams reflecting the faint shimmer of the sea. During the day, the warehouse appears abandoned but unremarkable, a relic of a time when ships delivered cargo and workers moved swiftly along its planks. At night, however, the building transforms into a place where ordinary expectation dissolves into uncertainty, and the familiar becomes quietly unsettling. The first sign that something is unusual comes from the lamps lining the dock and the exterior of the warehouse. They flicker intermittently throughout the night, their light cutting across the curved pier in wavering beams. Some visitors report seeing the glow brighten and dim without cause, as if reacting to movements unseen. The shadows cast by the flickering lamp stretch and twist across the wooden boards, creating shifting shapes that appear almost alive. The combination of curved architecture, uneven light, and darkness gives the pier a sense of disorientation, drawing attention to the subtle peculiarities that emerge as night deepens. Inside the warehouse, the air carries the scent of aged wood, salt, and lingering moisture. The interior is expansive, with tall ceilings supported by heavy beams and an intricate network of catwalks above the main floor. Dust drifts lazily in the weak light that filters through broken windows. And stacks of old crates and barrels create a labyrinthine effect. The space is still, almost too quiet, save for the occasional groan of timber settling or the soft lapping of water against the dock below. Yet within this calm, visitors sense movement where none should exist. The most frequently reported phenomenon involves the shadow seen pacing the catwalk above. Visitors describe looking upward to find a dark, human-like figure moving deliberately along the elevated walkways. The shadow appears to be dressed in indistinct clothing, its form elongated by the faint light, yet no actual person is present. The movement is purposeful, steady, and eerily consistent, tracing the same path along the catwalk multiple times. Some witnesses report that the figure pauses to look downward, as if observing those below, before continuing its silent patrol. The sensation of being watched is a common feature of visiting Crescent Wharf warehouse. Even when the shadow is not visible, visitors report an intuitive sense of presence overhead. Footsteps on the catwalk echo faintly through the warehouse, perfectly synchronized with the imagined movements of the figure. The sound is hollow, resonating against the high ceiling and the stacks of crates below, yet when investigated, there is no source. It is as though the warehouse itself holds an impression of activity, replaying it for those who venture within. Lamps inside the warehouse also behave unpredictably. Light bulbs dim, flare, or blink without warning, often in alignment with the appearance of the shadow on the catwalk. The flickering light casts moving shadows across crates, walls, and floorboards, amplifying the feeling that something is actively observing or moving above. Visitors report that even a slight change in light or shadow can provoke a heightened sense of tension, as though the space is aware of their attention. The architecture of the warehouse contributes to the phenomena. The curved dock and elongated interior create angles that distort perception. Shadows stretch unnaturally under the flickering lamps. And the catwalk itself, suspended high above the floor, becomes a stage for shapes that seem independent of gravity or logic. The combination of spatial distortion, variable lighting, and echoes creates an environment in which the ordinary laws of sight and sound are difficult to rely upon. Local legends surrounding Crescent Wharf warehouse trace back to its early years of operation. Some claim the pier was the site of accidents and disappearances among dockworkers. Others speak of cargo left behind or lost to the sea, claiming that the warehouse retains the memory of those who once worked there. The shadow pacing the catwalk is often described as a guardian, a restless presence tied to the building and the pier. According to these tales, the figure repeats its nightly patrol, retracing the motions of someone who moved through the warehouse long ago. Those who explore the warehouse in small groups or alone. Many feel compelled to look upward frequently, drawn by a subtle movement or change in the light. Some report hearing soft creaks or the dragging of objects along the catwalk, though no objects are visible. Others recount moments when their own footsteps seem amplified, as if another set of steps is walking in tandem with theirs, just above or slightly behind. The cumulative effect of these occurrences is a heightened awareness, a sense that every corner of the warehouse is alive with echoes of the past. Despite the mystery, Crescent Wharf Warehouse continues to attract visitors. Photographers, historians, and those drawn to unexplained phenomena come seeking to witness the flickering lamps, the shifting shadows, and the enigmatic figure on the catwalk. Each visitor leaves with an impression shaped by both what they see and what they sense, a combination of light, shadow, and sound that refuses to be fully explained. By dawn, the shadow retreats, and the warehouse returns to relative calm. The lamps stabilize, the fog lifting from the dock, and the echoing footsteps fade into silence. Yet the memory of the night lingers in the minds of those who walked the floorboards under the Figuria's watch. Crescent Wharf Warehouse endures as a place where architecture, light, and unseen presence converge, creating an environment both compelling and unsettling. It remains a site where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and the curve of the dock holds the echoes of a restless past waiting to be observed once more. Fogbreaker Bay Storage stands at the edge of a mist-laden harbor where the tide meets weathered docks and the chill of the sea carries an almost tangible weight. The building is large and industrial, constructed of corrugated metal and old timber that creaks under the persistent push of wind and moisture. Its doors are rusted but still functional, and its windows are fogged and streaked from years of salt and storm. The structure seems unremarkable by day, blending into the gray sky and the surrounding piers. But after dusk, the takes a of own. Those are or into thick atmosphere. Those are or into thick atmosphere. Those are or into thick atmosphere. Those are or into own. Those are or into thick atmosphere. 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 Those are or into. Fog pours into this building so thick that visibility drops to inches. Visitors who enter often find themselves immediately enveloped in a dense, white haze that clings to the floors and hangs in low drifts. Even familiar corners vanish within moments, and distant walls become obscured, leaving only shadows. Leaving only shadows and the occasional glimmer of rusted metal or a crate corner. The air is damp and carries the smell of sea salt and decay, chilling the skin and saturating clothing. Yet it moves with subtle currents that suggest something beyond the wind guides it. The air is damp and carries the smell of sea salt and decay, chilling the skin and saturating clothing. Each step taken produces muted echoes, swallowed almost immediately by the haze, and the sense of disorientation grows with every passing minute. Within the fog, voices whisper. The sounds are soft, almost imperceptible at first. They drift from unseen directions, twisting through the dense air and echoing off the metal walls. Visitors report hearing names spoken, fragmented phrases, or murmurs that rise and fall without pattern. Sometimes the whispers are deliberate, responding to movement, changing tone as a person shifts position or steps closer. Other times they are chaotic, overlapping with one another until the words lose meaning entirely, leaving only the haunting cadence of human sound suspended in the mist. The sensation is brief, fleeting, and almost imperceptible at first. Many describe the contact as gentle, almost cautious, as though whatever moves within the fog is curious rather than threatening. Each step through the storage building feels like navigating a living, responsive maze. The interior of Fogbreaker Bay storage amplifies the strangeness. Corridors formed by stacked crates stretch seemingly endlessly into the fog. Rusted shelves line the walls, their contents indistinct, sometimes appearing as if rearranged when revisited. The fog seems to shift around each obstacle, allowing the visitor's body to pass while obscuring everything beyond. Occasional drips of water from the ceiling echo sharply, yet the sounds are often accompanied by a whisper or a fleeting movement in the corner of the eye. Visitors report that the fog reacts to presence. It thickens when someone stands still too long, wrapping them in a denser, almost tactile shroud. It seems to pull back or thin when a person moves quickly, retreating to reveal glimpses of dark shapes that vanish before they can be identified. Some have felt the sensation of being guided along certain paths, the fog pressing gently from behind or brushing along the sides as though nudging them toward one corridor and away from another. These experiences are unpredictable, leaving a lingering tension in every step. Those who spend longer periods inside describe changes in perception. The sound of footsteps may multiply or overlap with invisible echoes. Whispers become more coherent, sometimes forming short, strange phrases that disappear when repeated aloud. Crates appear closer or farther than expected. Shapes that seem to move independently of the fog drift between stacks and vanish when approached. Visitors frequently report a sensation of eyes upon them, of being observed from just beyond the visible, heightening the sense of isolation. One explorer recalled following a faint shadow between two rows of crates. The fog swirled tightly around the figure, making it difficult to determine whether it moved or if the observer's eyes were playing tricks. As he approached, the shadow disappeared into the haze, leaving only a cold, damp air that lingered for several steps. The whispering continued, rising and falling, as though the figure had spoken in a language just out of comprehension. The experience left him shaken, yet compelled to return, drawn by the need to understand what moved within the fog. Another visitor felt a brush along her arm as she passed a long row of crates near the back of the building. She turned quickly, seeing nothing, yet the sensation repeated several times as she walked. At one point, a faint wet trail appeared across the floor, glistening in the dim ambient light and disappearing after a few moments. Others report similar trails, puddles forming briefly where an unseen presence had moved, only to vanish as suddenly as they appeared. The warehouse's reputation is tied to its location and history. Positioned at the edge of the bay, it was once used to store goods arriving from distant ports. Over the decades, storms and flooding claimed many shipments and lives. Some say that the spirits of those lost at sea or drowned while working in the warehouse linger here, bound to the fog that pours endlessly through its walls. The building itself becomes a vessel, a place where the past and present coexist in a thick haze that conceals, yet reveals, the memory of tragedy. For those who dare to enter, Fogbreaker Bay Storage offers an experience that is immersive and unnerving. The fog reduces sight to a few inches, whispers drift in from every direction. And unseen hands make contact with visitors as they navigate the shifting paths between crates. The building transforms into a labyrinth, alive with memory, presence, and the subtle interaction of what remains unseen. Within its walls, the fog moves with intent. The whispers echo with stories untold. And those who enter carry away the memory of unseen figures brushing past, leaving traces in water and air. A lingering sense that the warehouse is far more than empty space. Mooringside Freight Depot stands at the edge of a forgotten harbor, its timbered frame weathered by decades of salt spray, wind, and relentless rain. Its timbered frame weathered by decades of salt spray, wind, and relentless rain. The air carries the faint scent of rotting wood and brine, mingling with dust that drifts through gaps in the roof and walls. Sunlight filters weakly through broken windows, casting narrow beams that illuminate motes of suspended particles, creating an almost ethereal haze throughout the space. Casting narrow beams that illuminate motes of suspended particles, creating an almost ethereal haze throughout the space. Creating an almost ethereal haze throughout the space. Inside, the depot feels hollow and alive at the same time. High ceilings rise above a vast open floor, once filled with crates, barrels, and the constant hum of workers. Now, the emptiness amplifies every sound, making the space feel simultaneously immense and intimate. Ropes hang from the beams like nooses, long frayed strands swaying gently with the slightest draft. They were once used to secure cargo, to lift and lower goods from the catwalks above. Now they evoke an unsettling presence, dangling silently above the cavernous room as if bearing the memory of their previous purpose. The catwalk, once the domain of moving workers, has long since collapsed. Wooden planks lie in twisted heaps, rotted and broken, leaving only the beams above as a skeletal reminder of the structure that once allowed movement overhead. Yet despite the absence of any walkway, visitors often hear footsteps echoing above them. The sound is light, almost cautious, as if someone is walking deliberately across the old beams. Rises and falls in uneven rhythms, passing from one side of the depot to the other. Those who investigate find nothing. No living presence, no disturbance in the dust, only silence. No disturbance in the dust. Only silence. Punctuated by the imagined steps that seem to linger even when attention is elsewhere. The atmosphere is thick with the sense of history. The floorboards groan underfoot, echoing far beyond their own weight. Crates, toppled and broken, remain in scattered piles, while the beams above appear both strong and fragile, holding the memory of countless movements. The swaying ropes catch the light in strange patterns, casting long shadows that stretch across the walls and ceiling. Every corner feels alive, though the life within it is not obvious. It is a life built from echoes, vibrations, and the persistent remnants of labor now vanished. Visitors describe moments of unease as the footsteps continue. The sound does not always follow a predictable path. Sometimes it appears directly above, then shifts to the far end of the hall. At other times it comes from the beams near the entryway, then fades into silence before returning in another location. The irregularity creates a sense that the depot itself is aware, guiding sounds to precise locations. The effect is subtle but profound, leaving an impression that something or something is still moving through the upper reaches, unseen and unfettered by the passage of time. The ropes add another layer of tension. They sway slightly, often without any breeze. Occasionally, a visitor will swear they see them shift as though an invisible hand passed along their length. Some explorers have approached to touch a rope, only to find it still, solid in their grip. Yet when they step back, the faint sway resumes, as though acknowledging their presence without revealing why. The depot's history explains much of the imagery, though not the lingering sounds. Workers labored through nights and early mornings, moving cargo between ships and warehouses, securing goods with ropes and pulleys, and maintaining the beams and catwalks above. Accidents were frequent, sometimes minor, occasionally fatal. Over time, the depot was abandoned as shipping routes changed and new facilities were built elsewhere. Nature began reclaiming the space, but the echoes of labor persisted, embedding themselves into the beams, ropes, and floorboards. Many visitors interpret the footsteps as the memory of those workers. The depot seems to replay fragments of past activity, a kind of auditory preservation that allows the labor to continue long after the people are gone. Others sense something more deliberate, an awareness within the building, a presence that mimics the motions of life without fully recreating it. The combination of visual quasi of the dangling ropes, broken catwalk, and scattered cretissa along with the persistent sounds creates an environment where the past and present coexist in a tangible way. One explorer recounted standing beneath a section of intact beams while listening to footsteps above. He felt a subtle vibration travel through the floor as the steps passed, though no one was there. The swaying ropes seemed to align with the rhythm of the movement, creating the impression that the room itself was reacting. Another visitor described noticing the faint scuffing of a crate along the floor as the footsteps moved, though a careful inspection revealed nothing had shifted. The interaction between sound, shadow, and motion left both visitors unsettled and fascinated. Despite the eerie presence, Morningside Freight Depot remains compelling for those drawn to history, mystery, and the interplay of environment and memory. It offers a unique experience of space shaped by human labor, now haunted by its absence. Guests leave with the sensation of walking through a building that remembers, a place where ropes sway, footsteps echo, and the collapse of time has not erased the sense of movement. Morningside Freight Depot endures as a structure suspended between past and present. Anchored in the harbor's history, it remains a space of quiet tension, where dangling ropes recall their purpose. Footsteps defy explanation, and shadows move in rhythm with memories that refuse to fade. Explorers who enter its vast, empty interior feel the weight of labor past, the persistence of sound, and the silent testimony of a building that has witnessed centuries of work and continues to carry it forward in echoes and impressions that linger long after departure. Crimson Coat Cargo House stands at the edge of a windswept harbor, a long wooden structure that has weathered countless storms over the decades. The warehouse was built to store supplies for ships and merchants, its floorboards thick and its beams reinforced to bear the weight of heavy cargo. By day, it appears like any other industrial building, solid and functional, with the faint scent of saltwater drifting in through the cracks in the walls. A conflict remembered for its intensity and the blood spilled on the waters, a battle fought nearby that left its mark on the land. Its name comes from a naval battle fought nearby, a conflict remembered for its intensity and the blood spilled on the waters. Inside, the structure stretches long and narrow, lined with stacked crates and barrels that echo faintly when stepped upon. Sunlight filters through small windows, casting narrow beams across the worn wood. The air is cool and carries the faint tang of the sea, mixed with the earthy aroma of aged timber. The floorboards creak predictably underfoot, yet there is a weight to the silence that hints at something deeper, a lingering presence beyond what can be seen. During storms, the atmosphere of Crimson Coat Cargo House transforms. Rain hammers the roof, and wind whistles through gaps in the walls. It is during these nights that the most unsettling phenomena occur. Red stains appear on the wooden floors, vivid against the darkened timber. They seem to form without explanation, emerging in patches that stretch along the corridors and storage areas. Witnesses describe the stains as glistening slightly, reflecting the faint light of lanterns or flashes of lightning, yet when examined closely, the source remains invisible. Along with the stains, visitors report seeing figures moving along the walls. These apparitions are dressed in old military coats, their uniforms reminiscent of the naval forces that once fought near the harbor. The figures march with precise, deliberate steps, their presence silent and stern. They move along the edges of the warehouse, their forms illuminated occasionally by lightning or the flickering glow of a lantern, only to vanish when approached. No matter the angle or the light, the figures retain a rigid posture, suggesting discipline even in their spectral form. The movement of these figures is slow and methodical. They follow the contours of the walls, their march unwavering despite the chaos of storms outside. Observers often find themselves frozen, unsure whether to follow or remain still. Their faces are often indistinct, shrouded in shadows beneath their coats. Yet their presence is undeniable. Witnesses describe a sensation of being observed, as though the figures are aware of those walking among them, tracking their movements silently. The red stains appear to correspond with the figuresa march. Where the apparitions pause or change direction, the wood sometimes darkens with the vivid hue, as if the floor itself bears the memory of the battle. Attempts to touch or investigate the stains often reveal only smooth, dry wood beneath, leaving those who witness them puzzled and unnerved. The combination of spectral movement and sudden crimson markings gives the impression that the past of the cargo house has not entirely faded, replaying itself in the shadows of stormy nights. Historical records provide context, though no definitive explanation. Crimson Coat Cargo House was built shortly after the battle, meant to store supplies recovered from the harbor and provisions for the local militia. The naval conflict left many dead, and reports suggest bodies were brought ashore and temporarily stored within the area before burial. Over time, the warehouse continued to serve as a commercial hub, but local legends persisted, speaking of soldiers who never truly left and whose presence lingered in the building. These tales have been repeated through generations, growing more vivid with each stormy night witnessed by a new observer. Explorers and storm chasers describe a unique auditory experience accompanying the sightings. During lightning flashes, the creaking of the floorboards sometimes mimics the rhythm of marching feet, amplifying the sense of spectral movement. Wind whistles through the broken panes of the windows in patterns that mimic commands or orders shouted in the distance. Some visitors report hearing faint clatter of buttons and buckles, metallic echoes that vanish when approached. Each sound seems tied to the storm, yet it resonates within the warehouse itself, deep and encompassing. Standing within Crimson Coat Cargo House during a storm leaves a lasting impression. The combination of red stains, silent figures, and the amplified sounds of wind and boards creates a surreal, almost cinematic experience. Even those who arrive expecting rational explanations find themselves questioning what they have seen and heard. The atmosphere is heavy with history, tension, and the feeling of an unresolved past, replaying itself in the form of shadows and color. As dawn breaks, the storm subsides and the warehouse returns to its daytime calm. The red stains fade with the drying wood. The figures vanish entirely, and the floorboards become quiet once more. Yet the memory of the night lingers with those who have witnessed it. Observers describe a profound sense of connection to the past, a tangible link to the events that gave the warehouse its name. Crimson Coat Cargo House stands as both a functional structure and a repository of memory, where storms awaken echoes of naval conflict, and the past manifests in color, movement, and silence. Crimson Coat Cargo House continues to draw visitors curious to witness its mysteries. Its combination of spectral figures, unexplained red stains, and storm-activated phenomena creates an enduring fascination. The warehouse endures as a place where history is never fully settled, where the echoes of battle, duty, and discipline emerge once more with the crash of lightning and the roar of wind, offering a glimpse into a world where the past is never entirely gone. At the edge of a foggy industrial district, where shipping lanes converge and the water laps quietly against aging docks, stands a warehouse known as Lostwake Distribution Shed. Its steel walls have weathered years of storms and salt-laden winds, rust streaking the exterior in long, uneven lines. Large sliding doors creak with age, and the concrete floor outside is cracked, worn by decades of heavy cargo traffic. By day, the shed appears deserted yet functional, a relic of an era when shipping and storage dominated the waterfront. At night, the building transforms into a place where the ordinary rules of sound and perception give way to something far stranger. Inside the shed, a low hum seems to permeate the air. It is subtle, vibrating through the beams and walls, almost like the distant drone of a ship engine that continues to run long after the vessel has vanished from view. The hum is steady but uneven, rising and falling in pitch, as though responding to movement within the space. Visitors often describe feeling it in their chest and under their feet, a resonance that grows more pronounced the longer they remain inside. The sound is not mechanical, nor does it appear to originate from any visible source. It simply exists, a continuous undertone that seems to breathe along with the building itself. The ades interior is expansive and shadowed. Wooden crates, metal containers, and pallets are stacked in irregular patterns, forming narrow corridors that wind toward the far corners of the building. Dust hangs in the air, illuminated only by the faint glow of dim overhead lights or the beams of flashlights carried by explorers. Every step produces an echo that merges with the low hum, creating a layered auditory experience that is both unsettling and hypnotic. The space feels alive, as though the walls themselves are attuned to the presence of those walking within. Some visitors report hearing chanting beneath the floorboards. At first, it is so faint it can be mistaken for the settling of old wood or distant machinery. Yet the sound is patterned, rhythmic, almost deliberate. It rises from the planks and seems to originate from the very foundation of the shed, reverberating through the floor and into the legs of anyone standing above. The chanting is unintelligible, a series of murmurs and syllables that feel ancient or ritualistic. Those who hear it often describe a sensation of being observed, a quiet insistence that the shed itself is aware of their presence. The combination of the hum and the subterranean chanting creates a profound effect. Visitors describe a sensation of tension in the air, as though the building is holding its breath. Shadows stretch long across crates and containers, and light refracts oddly through the dusty atmosphere. The floorboards sometimes shift with a creak beneath a foot, though no structural weakness is present. Every movement feels amplified, every sound heightened, and the hum seems to pulse in time with the observer's own heartbeat. The architecture of Lost Wake distribution shed contributes to its eerie quality. The metal walls reflect sound in unpredictable ways, allowing faint noises from beneath the floor or from distant corners to reach the observer in unexpected patterns. Even the gaps between crates and shelving produce subtle reverberations that add to the sense that something is moving or whispering just beyond perception. Local lore surrounding the shed is as persistent as the hum itself. Some claim the land beneath the building was once used for clandestine gatherings or early industrial rituals, and that the chanting is the echo of those who once conducted secretive ceremonies. Others believe that the shed occupies a thin boundary between the living world and something older, where sound and presence linger in the structure long after their origin has faded. While these stories are anecdotal and unverifiable, they capture the way the shed shapes the imagination of those who visit. Researchers and structural experts have attempted to offer explanations. The hum could be caused by vibrations from nearby shipping channels or underground water channels, they suggest. The chanting could be the result of natural acoustic resonance, air movement through subfloor cavities, or subtle settling of materials. Yet these explanations fail to fully account for the precision, timing, and consistency of experiences reported by multiple visitors. The combination of sound, shadow, and sensation defies simple measurement and seems to exist in a space between perception and reality. Visitors who spend extended time within the shed describe a layered experience. Initially, the hum is noticed as a background vibration. As they explore further, the chanting emerges, drawing attention downward. And shadows in the corners of vision begin to feel animate. Each element reinforces the others, creating a heightened awareness of the environment. Some report moments of vertigo or disorientation as the sounds overlap, a feeling that the shed itself is guiding or observing their movement. Despite the uncertainty, many remain drawn to the space, compelled to explore further in the hopes of witnessing or understanding the phenomena. By dawn, the hum and chanting subside. The floorboards quiet, shadows shrink with the rising light, and the shed returns to the ordinary state of abandoned industrial architecture. Yet the memory of the sounds, the vibration beneath the feet, and the sensation of being observed remains vivid for those who experienced it. The shed endures as a location where sound and perception are inseparable from the structure. A place where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. And where the boundary between reality and the unseen is thin enough to sense in every vibration and whisper. Lost Wake Distribution Shed continues to attract the curious and the brave. Photographers, historians, and those interested in unexplained phenomena visit to witness the persistent hum. The subtle chanting beneath the floor, and the unsettling sense of presence that the building evokes. Each visitor leaves with impressions that linger long after departure, memories shaped by sound, shadow, and the profound quiet that exists between them. The shed remains a silent sentinel on the waterfront, a structure alive with resonance. Echoing histories, mysteries, and the unseen. Blue Lantern Wharf Hall sits at the edge of a weathered pier, its timbered walls creaking under years of exposure to salt, wind, and tide. By day, the building appears abandoned, its windows clouded with age and its doors warped by moisture. Crates and barrels sit stacked in long, uneven rows, remnants of a time when the hall was a hub of activity, shipping goods across the bay. Yet when night falls, the warehouse transforms. A mysterious blue light glows deep within, casting soft illumination across the damp boards and the stacks of forgotten cargo. Those who enter describe the light as ethereal, almost alive. It does not flicker like a flame, nor does it radiate heat. The glow is steady yet shifting, moving with a rhythm that feels deliberate. It appears far in the back of the hall at first, a faint, mesmerizing shimmer that catches the eye and draws attention inward. Visitors often pause, uncertain whether to approach, yet they feel an irresistible pull, an urge to follow the light as it beckons them deeper into the building. The blue light seems to respond to presence, adjusting its position when someone steps forward. It drifts slowly along the aisles, gliding past stacked crates and leaning barrels. Never leaving the hall but guiding observers deeper into its center. The movement is measured, almost purposeful, as if the light intends to lead them somewhere specific. Visitors report that the further they follow, the more the warehouse seems to change around them. Shadows stretch unnaturally. Crates appear taller, and the corridors seem longer than memory suggests. The effect is subtle but unmistakable, creating the sense that the hall itself participates in the journey. The air inside Blue Lantern Wharf Hall is damp, carrying the faint scent of saltwater and aged timber. Each footstep echoes softly across the floorboards, yet the sound is swallowed by the vast space, leaving a lingering quiet that feels alive. Occasionally, a distant creak or thud punctuates the stillness, but the blue light remains the primary focus, a guiding presence in a building that would otherwise feel oppressive and empty. Those who linger describe a variety of sensations as they follow the glow. Some feel a gentle brush against clothing, as if an unseen hand is guiding them along. Others sense a subtle shift in the temperature, cooler as the light passes or warmer when it pauses. A few report a soft hum accompanying the illumination, a low vibration that resonates through the beams and boards, adding to the surreal atmosphere of the hall. The blue light does not reveal its source. Attempts to locate a bulb, lantern, or reflective surface yield nothing. It appears to emerge from the shadows themselves, hovering near corners and rising slightly above crates. No matter how quickly observers move, the light maintains a measured distance ahead, always leading, never letting them catch up. Those who attempt to retreat often find the light repositioning to block their path subtly, encouraging them to continue deeper into the warehouse. Visitors have reported seeing fleeting shapes within the glow. At times, shadows appear alongside the light, stretching across the floor or leaning momentarily against crates. These forms are indistinct, often vanishing if one looks directly, yet they reinforce the sense that the light is not solitary. It moves as though accompanied by a presence, something aware of those who enter, observing reactions, and responding in kind. The hall seems to hold memory. Long after the glow fades at dawn, visitors report lingering impressions of the journey. The boards bear no visible traces, yet the sense of movement, of a path traveled under the blue light, remains in the mind. Some described feeling as though they were guided with intent, led to see corners of the warehouse that had long been forgotten, or areas that seemed strangely altered while under the glow's influence. One visitor recounted following the light to a far aisle, where it paused near a stack of crates. The illumination shifted subtly, revealing a small opening behind the stack that had previously gone unnoticed. As the observer peered inside, the light began to recede, drawing attention toward the next section of the hall. Moments later, the glow had vanished, leaving the visitor alone in darkness. Yet with a profound sense that the hall held more to discover, unseen but present. Another explorer described the feeling of being accompanied by the light even after leaving the warehouse. They noticed a subtle awareness in their peripheral vision, a faint shimmer reminiscent of the glow lingering just beyond reach. The experience left a lasting impression, a reminder of the hall's mysterious nature and the deliberate movement of the guiding presence. The history of Blue Lantern Wharf Hall is intertwined with maritime trade and the lives of sailors who passed through the pier. Some speculate that the light may be tied to those who worked here long ago, a manifestation of memory, energy, or purpose left behind. Others believe it is entirely separate, a phenomenon that defies conventional explanation, bound to the hall yet independent, aware of each new visitor that enters its domain. For those who venture inside, the experience is immersive and unforgettable. The blue glow guides, sometimes teases, and always captivates. The warehouse becomes more than a building, it transforms into a space alive with light, shadow, and the subtle presence of something unseen. Within the walls of Blue Lantern Wharf Hall, the glow continues its nightly path, moving deliberately through crates and corridors, inviting observers to follow. It guides, it observes, and it reminds all who enter that some mysteries are meant to be experienced rather than explained. Tide-worn harbor shelter rests on the edge of a jagged coastline, where the waves batter the shore with relentless persistence. The structure, built from weathered timber and dark stone, leans slightly from years of storms and tidal surges. Its boards are warped and cracked, and small gaps between the planks allow saltwater to seep through, carrying with it the chill of the harbor. From the outside, it appears abandoned, yet the shelter radiates a presence, a sense that it exists not merely as a building but as a vessel for something older and more persistent. Inside, the floorboards are uneven and slick with moisture. The faint smell of brine mixes with damp wood, filling the space with a cold, lingering scent. Small puddles gather where the boards have split, reflecting weak shafts of light from narrow windows. The shelter is dark, its corners swallowed in shadow, yet the sound of the sea always permeates the room. Waves crash against the harbor walls, wind whistles through gaps in the roof, and occasionally the tide rises quietly through cracks in the floor, bringing the movement of water into the heart of the building. It is during these high tides that the shelter becomes most unsettling. Observers report seeing ghostly hands emerge from the water, rising through the gaps in the floor as though reaching for something lost. They are pale, translucent in the dim light, moving slowly with deliberate intent. They do not grasp or strike. Instead, they push upward, surfacing briefly before retreating beneath the waves, leaving small ripples that spread across the puddles on the floor. The sight is fleeting, appearing for moments at a time, but it leaves a lasting impression on those who witness it. Accompanying the hands, some visitors hear voices bubbling from beneath the water. The sound is soft at first, like the distant murmur of waves, but with focus it becomes distinct, as if someone is speaking underwater. The words are indistinct, distorted by the movement of the tide, yet they convey a sense of urgency and longing. The voices rise and fall with the water, sometimes clear enough to feel directed at a listener, yet always slipping away before meaning can be grasped. Explorers describe it as both haunting and hypnotic, a sound that seems alive, responding to their presence within the shelter. The interplay of water, shadow, and sound creates a profound sense of isolation. Each splash from the tide, each subtle ripple on the floor, carries with it a presence that feels sentient. Visitors report that even the air seems heavier during these moments, the scent of salt and damp wood amplifying the sensation of being watched or guided by unseen hands. Shadows shift in the corners, not randomly, but as if stirred by the motion of the tide itself, responding to the movements of those within the shelter. Historical records suggest the shelter was once a place for dockworkers and fishermen, providing protection from storms and a temporary home for those who labored along the harbor. Over the decades, the building fell into disuse as shipping routes changed and the harbor quieted. Accounts of accidents, drownings, and disappearances among workers became woven into local lore. Many believe the hands and voices that persist are echoes of those who never left, trapped between the water and the wood, lingering in the moments that claimed them. Visitors who spend the night often describe a cyclical pattern. As the tide rises, water creeps through the floor cracks. Ghostly hands push up, and the bubbling voices begin, rising and falling with the ebb and flow of the waves. When the tide recedes, the water withdraws. The hands vanish, and the voices fade into silence. The shelter seems to breathe with the rhythm of the harbor, alive with the memory of the sea and those who were lost to it. One traveler recounted standing near the center of the shelter at midnight, watching as pale fingers pushed upward through a thin puddle of water. The hands moved in unison, tracing arcs that seemed almost deliberate. At the same time, the sound of murmured words rose from beneath the boards, forming syllables he could not understand. He described the experience as both terrifying and mesmerizing, a living memory of the harbor playing out before him. When the tide fell, the hands disappeared, the voices dissolved, and the shelter returned to stillness, leaving only the faint scent of salt and the echo of memory. Another explorer described the sensation of being followed by the subtle movement of water beneath the floor. She reported that every step she took seemed to trigger a ripple, accompanied by the faintest whisper of voices. When she stopped, the movement ceased, as if the water itself waited for her next action. The interplay of presence, sound, and water created a sense of being part of a larger rhythm, one that was at once natural and impossibly otherworldly. Tide-worn harbor shelter endures as a place where past and present intertwine. The tide rises through the cracks, bringing with it echoes of labor, loss, and longing. Ghostly hands surface to remind visitors of those claimed by the water, and voices bubble from beneath the floor, carrying messages that are never fully understood. It is a space where the sea itself seems alive within the shelter, preserving moments and memories that refuse to vanish. Visitors leave the harbor with a lingering sense of awe and unease, the sensation of unseen hands brushing against their feet, the echo of words that cannot be captured, and the presence of a building that lives with the tide. The water remembers. The hands reach. The voices speak softly from beneath the surface, inviting those who enter to witness the enduring mystery of the harbor. Rust-cliff cargo platforms stretch along a jagged coastline, suspended over dark, restless waters that churn below the steel framework. The platforms were built decades ago to handle heavy shipping and storage, their beams and walkways constructed from thick metal bolted together with massive rivets. Over time, exposure to saltwater and relentless storms has left the structure corroded, every surface streaked with rust and flaking paint. During the day, the platforms appear weathered but functional, a testament to industrial engineering. At night, however, the place transforms, revealing an atmosphere heavy with unease and mystery. Walking along the lower decks, the first thing visitors notice is the pervasive scent of iron and sea. The boards creak underfoot, metal groans with each step, and the wind sweeps across the platforms in cold gusts that carry the distant call of gulls. Rust drips slowly from beams and supports, leaving dark stains on the planks below. Each droplet seems to fall in rhythm with the natural sway of the structure, creating a subtle, almost hypnotic patter that echoes through the empty expanse. The effect is amplified as darkness deepens, producing an environment that feels both expansive and claustrophobic at once. The grinding of metal is another phenomenon that distinguishes Rustcliffe cargo platforms at night. Visitors report hearing long, drawn-out sounds, like chains scraping or gears turning, even when there is no apparent source. These noises travel unpredictably along the structure, bouncing off walls and beams, sometimes seeming close enough to touch, other times distant, almost teasing. The sound is deep, resonant, and strangely deliberate, as though the platforms themselves are aware of the presence of anyone moving among them. Higher walkways reveal a more unsettling sight. Shadowy figures appear along the upper decks, often glimpsed through gaps in the structure. They remain still at first, standing silently and watching. Their forms are dark and indistinct, elongated by the flickering light that passes through rusted railings and broken panels. Observers describe a sense of being scrutinized, as though the figures are assessing the intruders who walk below. The figures never speak, never gesture, and never approach. Yet their presence creates a tension that pervades the entire platform. The movement of these figures, when it occurs, is slow and purposeful. They sometimes vanish as suddenly as they appeared. No one has ever seen them climb down to the lower decks. Their appearances are sporadic and often coincide with gusts of wind or the deep grinding of metal, amplifying the sense that the platforms themselves are alive, resonating with some memory or consciousness embedded in their rusted structure. Visitors also report other subtle phenomena. Shadows seem to shift unexpectedly along the walls, long shapes stretching unnaturally and retracting with no clear source. Some hear faint, indistinguishable whispers carried by the wind, soft enough to be ignored yet persistent, adding an almost tactile layer of unease to the experience. The history of Rustcliffe cargo platforms provides context but few answers. The site was built to facilitate cargo transfer in a once bustling industrial harbor. Steel beams were transported and assembled on site, creating a network of elevated walkways and storage areas. Workers often labored through nights of wind and rain, maintaining the platforms while large cargo ships docked and departed. Over time, accidents and mishaps occurred. Metal fractured, loads slipped, and some workers were injured or lost. These events have given rise to stories that speak of restless figures still moving among the beams, guarding or retracing old routines. Storms amplify the eerie qualities of the platforms. Lightning flashes illuminate the upper decks, revealing the shadowy figures for brief moments. The grinding of metal grows louder during high winds, echoing across the water and enhancing the sensation of motion above. Rust drips more heavily during storms, and each drop lands with a hollow metallic thud. The combination of sound, shadow, and movement creates an environment that feels alive, haunted by its own industrial past. Explorers often attempt to document the phenomena. Photographs capture empty decks or faint glimmers of rusted metal. But the shadowy figures rarely appear in full form. Audio equipment records the grinding and occasional echoing footsteps. Yet fails to clarify the source. Even when multiple witnesses are present, the experiences remain subjective, reliant on perception and timing. The platforms resist full understanding, offering only fleeting glimpses of activity above the lower decks. Despite the unease, the Rustcliffe cargo platforms draw visitors eager to witness their mysterious qualities. The combination of rust, grinding metal, and shadowed figures creates a cinematic atmosphere that engages all the senses. Each visit offers a unique experience, shaped by weather, light, and the subtle rhythm of the platforms themselves. Those who stay long enough often describe a sense of being observed, of moving through a space that remembers and responds to presence. By dawn, the platforms return to their daytime calm. The wind softens, the grinding fades, and the shadowy figures vanish. Rust continues to drip, unnoticed in the growing light. And the wharf appears as a relic of industrial ambition. Yet the memory of the night lingers. Visitors recall the echoes of metal, the silent pacing above, and the sense of presence that cannot be explained. Rustcliffe cargo platforms endure as a place where history, decay, and mystery converge, offering a haunting reminder that some structures carry the echoes of the past, still moving silently above those who tread below. At the edge of an industrial district, surrounded by cracked asphalt and rusting fences, stands Shallow Grave Warehouse. Its steel siding is weathered by years of salt and rain, and the roof sags slightly under the weight of accumulated grime. Large sliding doors groan on their tracks, and the air carries the faint, lingering scent of old wood and metal. By day, the building appears empty but functional, a relic of a time when shipments passed through in steady rhythm. Yet beneath its mundane exterior lies a history that has colored the warehouse with an unsettling reputation. During renovations, workers discovered a burial site beneath the foundation. The find was unexpected, uncovered when a section of the floor was removed to inspect the original supports. Bones arranged in shallow graves were revealed, carefully placed but long forgotten. The discovery halted work and drew attention from authorities, though the history of those interred remained unclear. Some speculated the site was centuries old, remnants of an early settlement, while others suggested more recent origins. Whatever the truth, the presence of human remains beneath the warehouse left a lingering sense of unease that has persisted to this day. Visitors and workers report that the warehouse is not silent at night. Footsteps circle the building in slow, dragging loops, heavy and deliberate. The sound is unmistakable, echoing against the walls and reverberating across the surrounding lot. Those present often follow the steps with their eyes, expecting to see a figure, yet the path remains empty. The rhythm is steady, almost methodical, tracing the perimeter of the warehouse in repeated circuits. Each loop carries the impression of intent, as though the footsteps are performing a ritual. The impression is that of a being, but there is no one in sight. For no human observer. The sensation of being watched accompanies the footsteps. Many who have stood outside at night describe a weight in the air, a quiet pressure that seems to press against the chest and shoulders. The dragging steps appear to circle deliberately, drawing attention to corners, entrances, or spots near the foundation. Even inside the warehouse, visitors feel this awareness, the steps echoing faintly across the concrete floor and through the steel walls. It is a presence that is both unseen and unmistakably there. Some witnesses claim to hear someone breathing from beneath the floor. The sound is low and rhythmic, matching no mechanical source. It is subtle at first, barely distinguishable from the ambient hum of the city. Yet it grows in intensity for those standing near the center of the warehouse. The breathing seems to rise through the planks and concrete, pressing into the awareness of anyone above. Many describe a feeling of proximity, as though the unseen presence is lying just beneath the surface, watching and waiting. Inside, the warehouse retains the aura of its troubled past. Dust drifts in shafts of light that break through cracks in the siding. Old shelving and abandoned pallets form narrow corridors where echoes carry unnaturally. Footsteps of the living mingle with the sounds of the dragging loops outside, creating a disorienting sense of multiple presences. Shadows shift in the corners of vision, and familiar objects appear distorted under flickering light or through the haze of dust. Familiar objects appear distorted under flickering light or through the haze of dust. The space itself seems to hold memory, replaying patterns of movement long after those responsible have departed. Patterns of movement replay long after those responsible have departed. The surrounding area contributes to the eerie quality of the warehouse. The lot is cracked and uneven, allowing puddles of rainwater to form shallow reflections that dance in the night. Chain-link fences rattle in the breeze. And distant traffic hums faintly through the darkness. These ordinary sounds are transformed by proximity to the building, blending with the footsteps and breathing in ways that are difficult to separate from perception. Visitors describe moments when the combination of environmental noise and inexplicable phenomena heightens tension to a tangible level. Local lore surrounds Shallow Grave Warehouse, though details vary with each telling. Some claim that the burial site holds restless spirits, tied to the building by the disturbance of construction. Others suggest the footsteps are echoes of workers or travelers long forgotten, replaying their movements in a spectral loop. Stories describe the breathing as a whisper of warning, or a remnant of the past asserting itself in the present. While none of these accounts can be verified, they create a powerful expectation for anyone approaching the warehouse at night. Researchers have examined the site for conventional explanations. Acoustics experts note that the shape of the building can create echoes and amplifications, causing sounds to travel in unusual patterns. Structural engineers observe that settling foundations or gaps beneath floorboards can produce subtle noises. Yet these analyses fail to explain the deliberate pacing of the footsteps, the sensation of being watched, and the rhythmic breathing that seems to rise from beneath solid concrete. The experiences reported are consistent enough to defy ordinary interpretation. Visitors often describe a progression in their encounters. At first, the warehouse feels quiet, the hum of distant traffic masking subtle sounds. Then the dragging steps begin, circling outside, echoing against walls and asphalt. The sense of presence grows, a pressure in the air that cannot be ignored. Finally, the breathing emerges, low and steady, filling the awareness of anyone standing above. Each layer builds upon the others, creating a sustained atmosphere of tension and anticipation that is difficult to shake. By dawn, the building seems to release its hold. The footsteps fade, leaving only the ambient hum of the city. The breathing ceases, and the warehouse returns to a state that appears ordinary once more. Yet the memory remains, etched into the minds of those who witnessed it, a combination of sound, movement, and presence that lingers long after leaving. Shallow Grave Warehouse endures as a place where history, mystery, and the unknown converge. Its foundation holds more than stone and concrete, and for those who venture there at night, the past is never truly silent. Ghost Harbor Grand Storage Hall looms over the old waterfront like a forgotten colossus, its timbered walls and iron beams stretching skyward as though reaching for the mist that clings to the harbor. Once the busiest storage hall for ships and merchants in the region, it now sits mostly abandoned, its roof sagging in places and its floors creaking beneath the weight of years. By day, it appears silent and empty, the stacks of crates lined in rows that stretch endlessly into shadow. But at night, the building transforms, and those who enter know that it is far from lifeless. The hall is the largest and most feared of all maritime warehouses. Its size alone creates an oppressive atmosphere. Long corridors of stacked crates converge beneath soaring rafters. And the distance between walls allows shadows to stretch into deep darkness. The air carries the scent of old wood, saltwater, and iron. Each step taken across the boards echoes endlessly. Yet these echoes are often interrupted by sounds that no visitor can immediately explain. Lanterns fall from the rafters without warning. Visitors describe moments of quiet that are broken by the sudden crash of metal and glass striking wood. Lanterns, long rusted and unused, drop from above with alarming force, swinging as they fall, yet often causing no damage to the surrounding crates. Some report seeing them hover for a fraction of a second before plummeting, as if guided by unseen hands. The timing is unpredictable, the impact sudden, and the phenomenon is accompanied by a sense of weight, as though the building itself is shifting, reacting to invisible forces. Crates slam shut by themselves. Even stacked rows of empty crates are not immune. Visitors hear lids bang with a force that startles the senses, echoing through the vast halls. The sound is too precise to be the result of settling wood or shifting air currents. In some instances, crates open in one area while others close simultaneously elsewhere, creating the illusion of a choreographed movement. These sounds are often accompanied by the faint impression of motion just beyond vision, a feeling that something has passed between the rows, unseen yet unmistakably present. And many visitors report seeing a full ghost crew walking through the building. The crew appears intermittently along the aisles, their forms shimmering like reflections in water. Their uniforms and garments resemble the attire of sailors from decades or centuries past. Worn and weathered yet glowing faintly with an ethereal light. Some seem to carry tools or lanterns. Their motions deliberate and synchronized, as though the hall itself dictates their pace. The ghostly crew does not speak. There is no laughter, no conversation, only the movement of figures passing through the space, occasionally vanishing behind crates or merging into the shadows of the towering walls. Observers often describe the sensation of being watched, the eyes of the crew following them, though the figures never react to the living. When the crew reaches the end of the hall, they fade into the darkness as if swallowed by the building itself, leaving only the lingering scent of salt and the faint echo of their passage. The high rafters, angled beams, and expansive floor create acoustics that distort sounds in unsettling ways. Footsteps may echo in multiple directions, voices carried by shifting air currents blend with the natural groans of old wood. And the shadows stretch unnaturally, making corners seem deeper than they are. Observers report feeling a pressure in the chest, a sense of both awe and unease, as though the building is alive and aware, responding to their presence. Many visitors recount physical sensations accompanying the apparitions. A sudden chill sweeps through the hall as the ghost crew passes. The air may feel damp and heavy, carrying the scent of seawater. Some report a soft brush against arms or shoulders, as if the figures exist just beyond the edge of perception. Others describe a faint vibration through the floor, synchronized with the movement of the crew, giving the impression that the boards themselves are shifting beneath invisible feet. The origin of the hauntings is tied to the hall's long history. Ghost Harbor Grand Storage Hall was built to house cargo and provisions for ships traveling dangerous waters. Many sailors who worked here disappeared at sea, their bodies never recovered. Legends claim that those lost continue to inhabit the hall, bound to the tasks they once performed. Witnesses report consistent patterns. The crew appears along the central corridors, moving past the same aisles, often coinciding with the lanterns falling from above. The crates slam during these movements, synchronized in a way that suggests purpose rather than randomness. Even for those unfamiliar with the Hala's history, the repetition conveys an overwhelming sense of ritual, as if the building preserves the memory of the Sailorsa duties and presence indefinitely. Visitors often leave changed by the experience. The memory of shimmering figures, falling lanterns, and slamming crates lingers long after leaving the warehouse. Some speak of being drawn back to the hall, compelled to witness the phenomena again. Others describe a lasting impression of the building as a living entity, a space where past and present merge, where memory manifests as both sound and vision, and where the weight of human history presses tangibly against the walls. Ghost Harbor Grand Storage Hall remains a testament to lives intertwined with the sea. It is a place where history and haunting converge, where lanterns fall without warning, crates slam closed by unseen hands, and ghostly sailors move with purpose through the expansive halls. The building preserves their memory in motion, and those who enter become witnesses to a spectacle both mesmerizing and unsettling. In the darkness, the shimmering forms continue their endless tasks, fading into shadow, leaving only the echo of their passage and the enduring mystery of Ghost Harbor Grand Storage Hall. Thank you, my dear friend, for exploring the haunted harbor warehouses of Delaware with me tonight. These structures stand tall and silent against the tide. But within their walls the past remains alive. If you ever walk along a Delaware dock at night, and the fog thickens around your ankles, and you hear chains clinking softly behind you, listen carefully. The ocean is full of lost voices. And some of them still return to the warehouses they once knew. Should you hear footsteps echo across an empty catwalk, or see lantern light flicker behind a locked door, remember not every shadow on the harbor belongs to something living. Until our next haunted journey, my brave friend, rest gently, sleep soundly. And may the whispers of the water fade before they reach your door.